Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I know that this isn't the best way to duplicate our trade show booth and hanging around our booth and having fun, but I think this will be kind of nice. And I'm here with some of my colleagues. I'm here with my colleagues Johanna Hines, Bill Getz, and Leslie Jobson. And for those of you who are used to going to SIBA, my name is Eric Stragan. I've talked to several of you so far, and you'll meet me eventually. So we're all going to talk about some books as if we're hanging around a booth like we normally would. Again, I mean, we really do miss you, and it's not quite the same, but we hope you really enjoy it. Now, the first book I want to talk about is a book that actually isn't on our fall list. It was on our spring list. And if you went to Winter Institute, you probably heard me talk about it. And that's called Do You Read Me, which is from Gestalten. And the book actually is a lovely book that I think is a great book for independent booksellers during the holidays. And it features bookstores throughout the world, Europe, Asia, South America, and yes, United States as well. In fact, some of you on this call today watching this rep may actually know about this because your store is in it. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a wonderful gift. And as we all know, at this time of the year, we're really relying on our customers coming to our stores. And I think a lot of our customers will like this when they enter a store. Bill, you want to go on next, talk about a book that you're interested in?
Sure. I was thinking of doing a couple of books from our smaller presses, particularly starting with Unnamed Press, which has a very strong list this year. The first book I want to talk about, book I absolutely love, is Hysteria by Jessica Gross. It's a wonderful new Freudian analysis novel that had me both cringing and smiling simultaneously. Young, hypersexual, self-destructive Brooklyn woman, daughter of two Manhattan psychiatrists who disdain Freud. Over the course of a couple of days, has sex with her parents' dinner guest in a closet, sex with her roommate's brother, and with a stranger in her Brooklyn bar hangout. But when the new bartender mentions he saw her on the security camera, she realizes he's actually Sigmund Freud, and things get really interesting. It is just a fun read, a lot of content, but just it reads really fast. Darcy Stanky said of this, a story that's both delightful, deluded, and emotionally raw. Hysteria is true to its name. You want to look away, but you can't. This book grips you. And I agree. I think we'll turn it over to Johanna for the next.
Well, thanks, Bill. It's hard to follow that book, but I will try with one of our new publishers that has just come aboard Two Rivers, is Black Sparrow Press with David Godine, of course. And the book that I fell in love with is this book by Richard Buckner, and it's called Cuttings from the Tangle. And some of you guys might know Richard Buckner. He's a singer-songwriter. He actually worked with Frank Reese at Acapella Books in Atlanta for a while. And he has written this sort of haunting prose poetry. They're little short stories, almost vignettes. But his music was always very evocative of these sort of surreal ballads. And that presence comes through in these short stories, and they are just wonderful. And you can just imagine him singing them to you almost. And I think that book is coming in October. So make sure to stack that one up. And as you know, nobody makes more. Black Sparrow books are always just objects of art, so they are lovely just to hold in your hand. And I know you are a fan of that too, Leslie, but you're going to talk about one of our favorite books collectively.
Right, I am. But first I wanted to say thank you for turning me on to Richard Buckner, because I actually had never listened to him before you were so excited about this book. And I love him. He's like my perfect background music when I'm working. And yeah. So he's great. I wanted to bring up World of Wonders, which is a book from Milkweed that we're all thrilled for, and has shipped out in the last week. It's, Milkweed did Late Migrations, which for us was one of the great indie hits we had in 2019 and still continues into 2020. And I feel very similarly about this book, which is really examining the nature around us bit by bit and bringing Amy's own story into it. Her last name is Nezakumatil, but you can call her Amy Nez. And she grew up in the South. She was of Southeast Asian Indian descent. And she was a brown girl in the South and then in the Midwest. And she felt out of place, and her connection to nature is really what made her become who she is, which is this revered poet and now a nature writer. So World of Wonders, if you have not seen this book yet in your store, I would really encourage you to go look at it and order more. It is going to be one of the great books of fall 20, and I do think we're going to be doing a few reprints and catching up on some stock. So that's World of Wonders.
And one other thing too, just for you SIBA folks, she lives in Oxford, Mississippi, is a good friend of Square Books. And Leslie, is it right that Kiese Lehman did the blurb on the jacket for the book?
Yes, he did. And that blurb is, "This book is about to shake the earth."
So yes,
wow.
It's really beautiful.
All right, so I think I'll pick up again. Although I don't have that kind of a blurb on this book, which is pretty impressive. I do have a book that I think is really important. It's another book that was on our spring list, but it just shipped within the last couple of weeks here in August. And it's from Aperture, and it's called To Make Their Own Way in the World. Now, it's one of the most important books I think I've sold all year. Now, if you're at Winter Institute, you may have heard me talk about this. This is a book that concerns the Zili daguerreotypes, and these are daguerreotypes of slaves that were photographed on a plantation in South Carolina in or around 1850. The photos, the daguerreotypes, were lost. Essentially, they were found in the 1970s at Harvard. And the book not only duplicates the photos, but an artist, a photographer, Carrie Mae Weems, sort of does her own spin on the kind of photographs that were taken in 1850. But I think what's most important about the book is that there are about 15 essays, and the essays are brilliant. We have contributors like Deborah Willis and Henry Louis Gates. And the essays deal primarily with the way African Americans have been sort of represented in photography, advertising, motion pictures, television, since the 19th century. And often, and because of these daguerreotypes, which was accidental on Zili's standpoint, is that several of these daguerreotypes were used sort of against African Americans to stereotype them. So several of the essays look at this in the way negative representation in our culture. It's a very smart book. It's a book that I'm proud to sell, and it's actually lovingly made. And some of the photographs that Carrie Mae Weems sort of duplicates to look like they're from the 19th century will fool you into thinking that they're from the 19th century. Again, the book just shipped, so even though it was on the spring list, it's just shipping now. And Bill, I think you're up next.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to go for another Unnamed Press book, and the second debut novel from a woman who lives in Brooklyn. This is Like a Bird by Farhar Royson. And the cover isn't very easy to see because it's black and white because my color printer doesn't work. Farhar is an Australian-Canadian Muslim femme writer, which is quite a mouthful. Like a Bird is the story of Indian parents living in Manhattan who disown their daughter after a violent sexual attack. She's forced to reimagine her life, builds a new group of friends, opens herself to new experiences, and comes to question everything she knew about her past and about the past of her people. It's gotten some really interesting pre-pub reviews. Vogue said her story is one of survival and the power of community, something Rosen captures with her beautiful prose and piercing perspective that touches on today's political and social climate. And Taneas, the author of Bright Lines, also a Brooklyn author, says her imagination raptures narratives about the aftermath of trauma. We are not left scarred, but permanently imprinted with Talia's resolute will to find her way in her own world. I think this book is going to get a lot of attention, and it'll hit the shelf, I think, in a couple of days.
Very cool.
On to you, Johanna.
Excellent. One of the books, when I was thinking about this presentation and talking with the three of you, something that I thought would be fun to talk about is a book from $2 Radio. Now they are based in Columbus, Ohio. And one of the things that's really important about the $2 Radio story is that they have they're not only a publishing house, they have a bookstore, and they also have a cafe that's run by Eric and his wife. And it's a real community center.
Not me, another Eric.
Sorry. Yes, Eric at $2 Radio. And they really have made that space a community center. And it was something that was very important to them to have a place where people could come and read and write and talk and eat and hang out. And so they put together this really groovy, it's very punk rock cookbook, and it has real recipes from the restaurant. And I've actually eaten there, and this food is to die for. But the other piece of the book is that it has little stories about the community and the people in it. And I live in Kentucky, I live in Louisville, and I thought I would share one of my favorite sentences of all time. This is called Even Lake Erie Perch Fishless Tacos. That's the name of the essay. And then the sentence is, Mitch McConnell is mega old, but that doesn't mean all old people are deviants. Take Speed Dog's Aunt Louise. And it goes on to talk about how Aunt Louise does these fishless tacos. So you kind of get the idea. It's $15. It would look great on the counter. And it's just a great sort of celebration of, you know, the third place that all of your bookstores have come to be, and communities are really understanding what they have lost in the time that you've had to close. So that is my little nod to the punk rock world. Leslie, what were you gonna follow up with? Do you have another book?
I thought I might just mention one book that I know is going to be all over the trade show, but that's the Elena Ferrante Lying Life of Adults, which is coming out strict on sale on September 1st. And it's, I think for all of us here on the call, any book that we know, or on this recording, any book that we know that a consumer will want to go to a store to buy right now is essential for our indies. And I love having that book because I really feel like it's going to drive business to the indies in a great way this fall. So great expectations for that. And I really think they're going to be matched. And I hope it makes a lot of customers come into the store and shop.
That's a great one.
So I guess it's me. And Leslie mentioned World of Wonders a few minutes ago. And I can't help but think of World of Wonders with another title from Milkweed on the fall list, and that's The Shame. The Shame is a novel, and my pal Bill has a copy of it because, of course, I don't. Thank you, Bill. And again, I'm thinking of these two books, you know, together because they're two wonderful books from Milkweed on the same list. I know a lot of you don't put a lot of stock in Edelweiss, where we have community reviews and much love and community shelves. But I always point out to my buyers, in this case, there's a lot of love and a lot of community reviews, and it's justified. It's totally justified. I read this book a couple months ago, and I just loved it. It's a short, quick read, and it's very smart and very timely. It concerns a woman who lives with her husband and kids in Vermont and is somewhat bored. So she winds up, and I'm going to cut to the chase here, she winds up sort of enthralled with this woman online who has a very sort of nice profile of herself on social media. And the book looks at how people sort of, you know, kind of fall for something on social media, and how people will create, you know, an alternate version of themselves on social media that isn't exactly true, but makes them look like they're an influencer or possibly far more important or far more polished than they really are. I won't give away the book's ending or anything, but it does look at, you know, how when we are feeling, you know, sort of weak or sad or confused, we can fall for something online. And I think it's very timely, especially now. McKenna Goodman's the author, and I believe she's doing some virtual events with several of you this fall. And I think it's a terrific book. And I know several of you have already ordered the book. Bill, I think it's up to you now.
Well, I'm going to do a book that's set in your territory.
That's
Eric.
right. It's a good one too.
The Scavenger. This is I guess you would call it a mystery, but a homeless man in D.C. finds himself caught up in the mysterious series of events. As the situation unravels, he has to use his detective skills and street smarts to uncover who's really doing something before he's punished for a crime he didn't commit. Very well written. Not just a mystery, but a commentary on homelessness, mental illness, drug use, and also the care that's available to people like that. First 50 pages require a little bit of attention because it's written in a combination of street dialect and Dickey's addled, drug-addicted mind. It's obvious why he starts it this way, because as Dickey's mind clears, it really starts to move along and feels real street real. Great cast of characters, kind of a 21st century Baker Street irregulars with a complex Chinatown-like plot. I hope that this sells well enough that he writes another one, because I really want to know what happens to Dickey next.
Well, Bill brought up a good point, about the first 50 pages, and it can be a little jarring. And one thing that's really interesting about the book, it's primarily written in second person, which is really hard to maintain. Right. I mean, I can only think of a few books where that really works. And, one of the best known in the past 30 or 40 years is Bright Lights, Big City, which was, 150 pages. So he can keep it up for much longer than that is impressive. I mean, I certainly couldn't write more than 2 pages in a second person, so it's pretty impressive.
That was an amazing part of this book. That just
really is.
Think of it, because you don't even notice that. It's so well done.
That's a good point. No, you're right.
Very cool.
So I think you're up next, Johanna.
Yeah, I was going to talk about a book from one of our publishers in the PGW stable, and it's Hub City Press, which you are all very familiar with. This book is can you guys read that? It is called A Measure of Belonging, and it's 21 writers on color on the New American South. This is an incredibly important anthology, and it's a paper original, so it's going to be an easy one for you to stack up as you are able. But it's 21 different writers. They all are BIPOC. They're Black, Latinx, Asian, and they talk about their experiences about living in the South and what does the South mean in the 21st century. Now, this book was compiled in late last year, so it's before everything that happened this summer, but I think it's an incredibly important foundation and contextualization of what has happened this summer, and these voices are so important to listen to in terms of they bring up a lot of the ideas that have been brought to the forefront now. So I think it's an important one. I know that Kiese Lehman, again, he seems to be a favorite these days, but he is one of the contributors. All of the proceeds of the sale will go to the Southern Poverty Law Center. And many of the contributors have also actually contributed their fee to that organization. But I think you'll have, I should say too that the writers are from all over the South. So there's a lot of regional interests from those writers. But I think it's a great one, no matter where you are in the region, whether you're a NAIBA store or a SIBA store. It is a great anthology of these emerging voices. So that was one I wanted to bring up. And before I pass it to Leslie, there's another book that I wanted to just very briefly mention, and it's an old book. It's Larry Watson's Let Him Go. And the reason I want to bring this up, a lot of you have Larry Watson, he's been making a big splash this summer with his new book. But the special thing about this older book that really put him on the map is that Mitchell Kaplan's production company is making the movie of Let Him Go. And I believe my compadres will verify this. I think it's Diane Lane and Kevin Costner.
It certainly is.
Yes. Yeah. And so they are starring in the movie of this, which I believe will be releasing either directly to Netflix or there will be a Netflix component in October. So all of your PGW reps will be selling the movie tie-in edition, which will not be this jacket. It'll be the new jacket, but I think it's an important one to bring in. And it's one of the great mystery stories written in the last 25 years. So with that, I pass it to Leslie.
And thanks, Johanna. I wanted to say in the Hub City book, it's amazing to me how timely that book is. We have had in our collective bag across brands, we have a lot of social justice titles. It's all independent publishers, and that's really a lot of them published into that category. And Hub City has this book that's obviously been coming for a year or two in manuscript, and all of a sudden it's here at a time that couldn't be more perfect. It's really kind of breathtaking how that turned in. And then I wanted to bring up another title in the same vein as the Elena Ferrante, which is to drive consumers to your store. Today is, as we record this, is August 26th, and yesterday was August 25th, which is a strict on sale date for Helen McDonald's new book, Vesper Flights. And right out of the gate, that book is just flying off the shelves, no pun intended. So Vesper Flights, H is for Hawk was one that kind of caught us all by surprise, the level of passion for that title. It was a real joy to watch that book sell. I feel the same for Vesper Flights. It's going to be something that is just going to be around for years and years and become iconic. And right now is the opportunity to sell it. And congratulations to all you bookstores who ordered a lot of it and are selling it. I'm happy for you.
And one thing about that, Leslie, that a bookseller just told me yesterday that I thought was very interesting. She's really been struggling to read books, just being overworked and just the stress of everything that's going on right now. And she said Vesper Flights was one of the few books that she could read because they are essays and it's not a long format. And she felt a real sense of not only accomplishment, but just of nourishment from these essays because they were contained. She could understand the thesis, she could get through it, she could enjoy it, and then she could put it down and move on with the rest of her day. So whereas, of course, H is for Hawk is a long memoir. I mean, I think you're exactly right that it just hits at a perfect time when, maybe essays are what we need to kind of wrap our brains around.
That's interesting. I agree. And I feel the same about World of Wonders, actually.
Yeah, good point.
It's the title we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's just like these small parts of the world around us, very digestible. And when you're very distracted with everything that's going on around you, it reminds you to focus in on the nature around you.
And the title essay in Vesper Flights was serialized in the New York Times Magazine section, which does not hurt sales.
Right. No, that's so true.
So I want to talk about another PGW title from one of our smaller presses, Two Lines, based in the Bay Area. My pal Bill, fortunately, has a copy of it because I'm a huge Maureen Nadai fan. I'm talking about that time of year. In many ways, a couple of my buyers joked with me when I was talking to them about this book this summer. It's like, I don't know if I should trust you because you like everything she writes. And, while that's true, I do think this is one of her best efforts. And I think it's a really smart, clever, disturbing book that, although disturbing, I think creepy is a better word than ultimately frightening. It's a story about this man who lives in Paris with his wife and kids, goes to a small village in France on a holiday, and his wife and kids disappear. So he starts asking around and starts asking different bureaucrats and cops in town for help. And weirdly, no one seems to be that concerned. Everyone's very nice to him and very kind, but they aren't, and they're somewhat helpful, but not exactly. And after a while, Herman, the man from Paris, starts to sort of lose himself. He decides to stay in the town, become part of the town, and he starts to lose sight of who he really is. The book sort of looks at sort of French bureaucracy and pettiness in a sort of darkly ironic way, but it's also very smart, and it could have easily turned into a horror novel, and it's not. It's more psychological. And it makes you really think, it's like, why doesn't anyone care? What's going on here? I think it's a really smart book. It's a novella. It's quite small, but it's very sharp. And like everything that she's written, I hang on every word, and I can't wait to get to the next page because I want to see what happens next. I think she's a terrific writer. And the reason why I don't have any arcs and Bill has to show it up, because I think I blabbed about it as soon as I got them, and I had to ship them out almost immediately. So, Bill, you have something up next.
Yeah, but I wanted to say about that, if you read the first page on that first chapter of that book, you cannot stop.
Exactly. I think I read it in a night. You know.
Creepy is 100% what it is. You read that and you go, this, I don't know if I have to read more, but I don't know if I want to.
I know exactly. It's like, I need to know what happens, but I don't know if I want to.
And what it sort of reminded me of a little bit was an update on Franz Kafka's Castle.
No, there's a Kafka element, definitely.
Yeah, where they're waiting around. You don't know why are they waiting? Why is nothing happening?
I know, it's like they're nice, but they're not doing anything.
Right. So I thought I'd talk about a much lighter book, the third one from Unnamed, which is Escapes. This is kind of a wacky novel set in an alternate history world where Scrabble is suddenly everywhere. The once innocent board game went pro, got rich and corrupt on TV money and cigarette sponsorships. It's the third most watched television sport by 1996, earning major players fame and fortune, and even a mafia called Scarfia. Tunad, the author, is actually a competitive Scrabble player from Argentina who'll be competing in the 2020 World Cup in Montevideo and intends to win because, as he says, it'll be great for book marketing purposes. It's so much fun. It's such an, if you don't like Scrabble, you'll still like this book because it's a bit of a mystery. It's a bit of an adventure story. The best quote I've seen came from Mark Haber at Brazos Books. He said, "A deft, hilarious, and bursting with imagination, an assured and stunning debut that's nothing less than brilliant." And I agree entirely. I think it's now your turn, Johanna.
It is indeed. And a book that's a bit more sobering than that one is from the New Press, and it's the new biography of Andrea Dworkin. And I think this is an incredibly important moment for Andrea Dworkin and a reassessment of her writing. You know, last year they had the collection of her books, the Hot Slit, can't remember the name of the book, but of her writing. And I think that brought a new generation to her work and to understanding her radicalism and her revolutionary thinking. I think that this one, this is a biography that corrects a lot of the mistakes and the misgivings, and Dworkin was so villainized by so many people, and she really was a champion when misogyny was taken for granted in a way that we are slowly seeing it fall away. And so I think, she was just light years ahead of her time. And I think anyone who's interested in sort of that second wave of feminism will find this book an incredibly important book. And I do think that as booksellers, it's going to be one that will be reviewed and talked about a lot. And no matter what way the election, what happens, I mean, we are starting to see what will evolve in our culture after the beginnings of this Me Too moment. And Dworkin's work really informs a lot of policy that needs to happen. So I think she's just an incredibly important person, quite overlooked, and it's just a must-have for your biography section.
Yeah, I think you're right, Johanna. I know I've talked to a lot of you watching this about this book this summer. And, a lot of you remember there's a nice long article in the New Yorker, I think it was last year, on Dworkin. Right. And I think it's a really good time. I think she's having a bit of a moment. I think she does need to be reassessed. I know a lot of people, may not be that familiar with her work. And I think this is one of those books that could be like a nice backlist book. It's going to be available for a long time. A really important book for anyone sort of libraries interested in this sort of thing, sort of post World War II, American history, feminist thought, etc. I think it's a really important book.
Yes. So on
That's
that light note, Leslie, did you
Oh,
want to?
I have one more book I thought I'd bring up, and I
Okay.
don't have it with me, but I do have a picture on my phone, so I'm going to. I don't know if you can see.
I was going to talk about that.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Can I start and then you
You
go
can
from
start,
here?
Leslie.
I was going to talk about a book that's actually shipping out in the next few weeks from David Godino. You have it. And that's Beneficence. And it is such an in-house favorite right now of so many of the men and women who are selling this press out there in the world, which is great. I'm reading it right now based on Eric's enthusiasm and our rep Rob. And it's coming out in about 3 weeks. She has a lot of virtual events with stores, particularly in the New England area where she's based. But it's a wonderful novel. And there are great quotes from Richard Ford and Ursula Heggie, Kim Barnes, and Richard Russo. It's a fantastic novel. And Eric, I'll let you take it away from that.
So, no, you're right. And Danny Shapiro has a nice quote too, again. No, I mean, this is from David Godine, and I was really looking forward to reading this, and I wasn't disappointed. It is a very heavy book, but it's beautifully written, and it tells a tragic story and how it affects a family. And it's universal. I mean, sure, it takes place in Maine, but it's universal. It's lovely. It takes place right after World War II. Gradually over a small period of time, and primarily in the late 40s and the 1950s. I think what's really interesting about the book is that it tells a very heavy story, but in a very poignant, touching way, and so that you don't feel particularly emotionally crushed, but it really does make you think. And I actually looked forward to each chapter because I wanted to see how the story was going to progress, because the story is told from the viewpoint of different family members. So it doesn't focus on just one person and how this tragedy affects everyone. You see how it affects everyone in the family. And I think it's done so well. It's like, as I was reading the book, well, is it going to be the father next, the mother? I mean, I want to see how this is being told. What year will it be next? I thought it was very clever the way the author, Meredith Hall, told the story. And I thought it was done so well. It's one of those books that I'm so glad we have. I'm glad we have the ARCs. I've sent them out to some of you watching this, and I do want you to take a chance on it. And it is a great book. And I think that was actually the last book I have on my list. I was saving the best for last, but
I'm sorry.
Leslie stole my thunder with her phone. Sorry.
Well, Bill, what are you going to finish with?
I already finished.
You finished. All right. Well, then I'm gonna put an exclamation point on this chat by talking about
Oh yeah.
my favorite short story collection. And this is also from Hub City. Can you guys see it? It's called You Want More, and it's the selected stories of George Singleton. And this was another book that I loved, partly for the shortness. I love short stories, but especially in the last 6 months, they are sort of all I can wrap my brain around. And you know, if you do know George Singleton, you will know what a special collection this is. And there are some unpublished stories here. I think there are 30 stories in the collection. But if you don't know George Singleton, you are in for a treat. I think some people, depending on your age and your sensibility, I've heard him compared to Faulkner. I've heard him compared to Flannery O'Connor. He has the wit of George Saunders. He is just one of the most clever writers out there, and has just really steeped in a Southern tradition. Donald Bartlemy is another one for you older folks out there that remember Bartlemy. But some of them are funny. Some of them are just these little vignettes that you just sit and kind of soak in the atmosphere of the characters and the place. But it is just a gorgeous book. And I know that Hub City was going to try to have him tour, and he's doing some virtual events around the South. He's in Spartanburg, but it's a great collection, and it's something unexpected. And one of the great things about being in this business, of course, is discovering people who write things that you both knew instinctually in your bones, and then these surprises, you know, and that's why we keep reading, I think, is to make those discoveries. So I would encourage you to pick that one up. Oh, and the foreword is by Tom Franklin. So
Nice.
there's some chops there.
And
But
the stories are great. I mean, many were unpublished, some were published years ago in the Atlantic Monthly, I believe, and a few other places.
that's right.
What I like about his stories is that, you know, some are quite funny, and some are almost like, you know, you use the word vignette. That's what I would say, a vignette, a sketch. I think I mean, I actually love short stories, and I can pretty much guarantee if we get a short story collection, you know, in a season, I'll read it or read most of the stories, particularly after I read a sort of a heavy novel like Beneficence, to be honest with you. I'm serious. So, you know, I kind of like, you know, sometimes they're kind of cleansing, you know, but the single one's great. They're really nice to have that on our list.
Yeah.
So is that
This
every?
is the part where I'd like to buy you all a beer and take this conversation to the bar, but I guess we can't do that this year.
I feel like we should, if they made it this far, if you've watched this video all this way through, we really owe you a drink when we next see you.
We do. We'll send you a coupon. Send us an email and we'll send you a coupon good for one free drink the next time we see you.
Absolutely. We're really looking forward to that too. I really are. We really do miss you. So
yeah. And thank you all for all that you do to support independent publishing. It's, you know, it's definitely the variety and the texture of your shelves beyond some of the bigger, more obvious books. And we are just so proud to represent these books, and we are so grateful to see you and to have you buy them from us.
That's right.
All right, on that note, I'm going to stop recording. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.